He invited Caroline Levitt onto his show to corner her, but what he didn't expect was that she'd be the one walking off the set, stunned, silent, while she never even raised her voice. Caroline had done dozens of interviews before, some friendly, some not. But when her team told her the Everett Lane show had extended an invitation, she raised an eyebrow. "You sure this isn't a trap?" she asked, half joking. Everett Lane had built a reputation for cutting off guests, especially conservatives. His show, filmed in a sleek downtown Philadelphia studio, was a Monday night ritual for millions of progressives. For others, it was background noise, loud, sarcastic, unpredictable. Still, Caroline wasn't a rookie. She had sharpened her skills battling aggressive hosts on college town panels and early morning cable segments. The more hostile the room, the sharper her focus. Her communications director, Lyle, leaned against the wall with his arms folded. "You've got nothing to prove, but if you go prepared. He'll bait you. He'll interrupt. Don't take it personally. Just keep your rhythm." Caroline didn't respond right away. She stared at the screen showing Everett's latest episode, where he mocked a guest for fumbling a response on school choice. "I'll do it," she said at last. "But I'm not playing defense." Lyle blinked, asking for clarification. "I'm not going in there to be polite while he talks over me," she clarified. "If he wants a spectacle, he'll get one. But it's going to be on my terms." The following week was a blur, calls from producers, topic outlines, last-minute schedule changes. The show's producer, Gwen, kept circling back to one topic: free speech on college campuses. "We'll start there," she'd said. "Everett's passionate about it." Caroline smirked. "Yeah, I've seen passionate used as one word for it." Her team flew to Philadelphia on a Wednesday morning in early March, with snow still lingering in spots and a sharp chill in the air just before spring made its final entrance. Caroline kept to herself on the flight, headphones in, writing notes, not rehearsing, but preparing herself mentally. Landing in Philly, the team headed straight to the hotel. Lyle handed her a copy of the final rundown. "They're expecting a calm debate," he said. Caroline didn't look up. "They invited the wrong person," she said. She wasn't angry, but she was clear. That night, she FaceTimed her younger brother, who had just returned from a campus protest in Austin. "People still think yelling louder means they're winning," he said. Caroline nodded. "They'll learn." Before the call ended, her brother added, "Don't let him rattle you. Just answer the question, not the tone." The advice stuck with her. The next morning, she woke up early and took a walk to a quiet cafe near Rittenhouse Square. She liked observing people in cities she didn't know, especially in neighborhoods that didn't fit neatly into red or blue. At the cafe, she noticed a young man reading The Atlantic, sipping his coffee with headphones on, a woman in scrubs ordering breakfast with a tired smile, two construction workers joking about traffic. No one cared who she was, and that grounded her. Back at the hotel, Gwen texted, "We're set. Studio car coming at 3:15. You'll be live at 5. Everett may say hi beforehand. That may say hi told Caroline all she needed to know. He wasn't planning on it, and she didn't mind. Caroline dressed carefully, nothing flashy, nothing too formal. Navy blazer, cream top, clean makeup, and a silver pin from her grandmother. Before leaving, she looked in the mirror, exhaled, and turned off the light. But as the car rolled toward the studio, she had no idea just how far off script the show was about to go. The building was taller than she expected, glass panels stretching from street to sky, reflecting the gray clouds above. The studio was on the 12th floor, tucked behind a nondescript lobby that smelled faintly of espresso and sanitizer. The driver let Caroline and Lyle out near the side entrance, where a production assistant was already waiting. "You're early," the assistant said, leading them through security. "That's good. Everett's in a mood." Caroline smiled slightly. "Is that different from his usual?" The assistant didn't answer. The elevator ride up was quiet, save for the occasional ding from passing floors. Lyle broke the silence. "If he gets personal, redirect. Don't match his energy." Caroline nodded once, her eyes on the floor number climbing toward 12. But she wasn't worried about matching energy, she was planning to control the room's temperature from the moment she sat down. When the elevator doors opened, the first thing she noticed was how cold the hallway was. Polished concrete floors and walls covered in framed screenshots from past interviews. She passed a photo of Everett yelling at a former senator, another of him smugly sipping from a mug labeled Facts First. A woman in a headset met them halfway down the hall. "You'll be in Green Room 2. Everett's wrapping up a call." Green Room 2 looked more like a dentist's waiting area: white walls, 2 armchairs, a tray of cold waters and energy bars, and one large monitor showing the live feed from the studio. Everett's voice echoed faintly from the screen. "If you honestly think banning speakers helps students, you've already lost the plot," he was saying. Caroline didn't sit right away. She watched his face on the monitor, smug, fast-talking, his tone just shy of sarcastic. She had seen it all before. People like him didn't argue to win, they argued to entertain. The door opened behind her. "Well said. If it isn't the rebel from New Hampshire." Caroline turned. There he was, Everett Lane, in his sharp black blazer, trademark white sneakers, and that half-forced smile. "Wasn't sure you'd show," he added. Caroline extended a hand. "Why wouldn't I?" Everett shook it loosely. "People like you usually send tweets, not actual arguments." Lyle shifted behind her, but Caroline didn't flinch. "I figured I'd give your viewers a reason to stay through the first segment." Everett raised his eyebrows, impressed but sizing her up. "Careful. You might start sounding confident." "I am," she replied, deadpan. He laughed once. "Let's just keep it civil, yeah? You say your piece, I say mine, and we all go home in one piece." Caroline didn't respond to that. She just looked at him for a long second and said, "I hope you brought better arguments than you had on last week's episode, otherwise, it's going to be a short conversation." That was when she saw it, a flicker in his eyes. Brief, but unmistakable. He turned to Gwen, who had entered quietly during their exchange. "We good?" he asked. "All set," Gwen replied. "Live in 12. You'll be seated across from Caroline." First segment, Campus Speech Codes. "We'll move to social media bans in segment 2. Everett nodded. "Keep her mic hot." Gwen gave a tight smile. "All guest mics stay on." "Yeah, you know that," he winked, and walked out. Caroline turned to Gwen. "Is that normal for him?" "More than I'd like," Gwen replied. In the minutes before going live, Caroline sat down and went over her notes one last time, watching the studio countdown on the monitor. Her heart was steady, alert, focused. She glanced at the camera angles being tested: 2-shot, close-up, wide frame. No room for error. She took a sip of water, then looked at Lyle. "Ready?" he asked. She gave him a quick nod. "You've got this," he said, with a smile. She returned it. He's not as clever as he thinks he is. As the stage lights came on and Everett took his seat across from her, there was one thing no one in that studio expected: how fast the power dynamic was about to shift. The studio lights were harsh, clinical, and hotter than they looked on screen. Caroline's chair was angled slightly away from Everett's, an intentional move by the producers to stage visual tension. She adjusted her blazer, checked her posture, and glanced at the monitor showing the countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A red light blinked on. Cameras were rolling. Live microphones were hot. Everett launched right in. "Welcome back to the Everett Lane Show. I'm Everett, and tonight I'm joined by Caroline Levitt, former White House staffer, commentator, and one of the loudest voices in the so-called free speech movement." Caroline smiled but didn't react to the tone. Everett continued, "Let's get right to it. Caroline, you've said publicly that college campuses are hostile to independent thought. Are you suggesting that students shouldn't be allowed to protest speakers they disagree with?" Caroline leaned in slightly. "I'm suggesting that shouting someone down isn't protest. It's performance. And when universities allow it, they're not protecting students, they're protecting noise." Everett let out a short laugh. "So students don't get to express outrage? Now that's rich, coming from a political side that gets triggered by pronouns." Caroline felt the energy shift in the room just slightly, but she didn't take the bait. Outrage is fine. Silencing is not. There's a difference between protest and preventing speech altogether. If your argument's strong, It should stand on its own. You don't need to block the door. Everett leaned back in his chair, stretching a hand toward the camera, as if explaining the basics to a slow class. Let's not pretend this is about protecting speech. You want to center voices you agree with, and cry censorship when others push back. Caroline interrupted, not with volume, but with timing. And you don't want to protect debate. You want to curate it. You only like freedom of speech when it flattens your worldview. Everett sat forward sharply. I'm not the one passing laws about what teachers can say in classrooms, Caroline. Neither am I, she shot back, calm and pointed. But if we're going to talk policy, let's talk about administrators canceling events because someone's feelings might get hurt. That's not education. That's theater. Everett faltered, just a bit. There was a flicker of discomfort in his expression. Not panic, more like realization. Caroline wasn't playing defense. She was steering. He tried again. You've built a career crying victim. Oh no, the big bad university wouldn't let my speaker talk. Meanwhile, you push policies that restrict actual academic freedom. Caroline's tone didn't shift, still calm, still sharp. I've spoken at schools where security had to walk students out in tears because their own classmates were threatening them for attending. If that's the freedom you're defending, Everett, then maybe check your compass. The studio grew quieter. You could hear the subtle shuffle of camera operators adjusting their positions, the soft hum of the air system above. Lyle, standing just behind the set wall, never blinked. Everett's smile was tight and rehearsed. So it's about feelings now, he asked. Caroline's response was measured. No, it's about fear. And if you can't tell the difference, maybe that's why you're still treating this like a game. A voice from the control room came through Everett's earpiece. *2 minutes left in the segment. He adjusted his mic, clearly trying to regain control. Caroline, I'll ask you plainly. Are you saying the left is systematically shutting down free speech? Caroline tilted her head slightly. I'm saying it's not a glitch. It's a strategy. Everett opened his mouth, but Caroline was quicker. And the irony is, this isn't new. Every generation has had people who pretend they're the resistance while running the institutions. You've just rebranded it for a second. Everett blinked, gave a forced laugh, and leaned forward, trying to reset the tone. All right. We've had a lively start. After the break. Caroline cut in, still steady. Before we go, Everett, just one question. Do you ever let your guests finish a thought before you tell them what they meant? Everett paused. I thought I did. Roll the tape back, Caroline said, smiling, but her tone was sharp. But before the crew could cut to commercial, Everett shot a glance at the control booth and realized this wasn't going to be just another episode he could steer back on script. The moment the red light went off, and the segment went to commercial, the room was still. No small talk. No sips of water. Everett didn't even look at her. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, tapping his note cards against the desk. Gwen's voice came through his earpiece. Back live in 90 seconds. Caroline sat still. She wasn't smirking, nor was she angry. She was watching. Finally, Everett turned to her, his voice quiet but tense. You done hijacking my show? Caroline shrugged lightly. Are you done trying to monologue through a conversation? He didn't respond. Gwen's voice again. 60 seconds, keep it tight. One of the techs leaned in to adjust Caroline's mic, but she didn't move. The air had shifted. Everett wasn't used to being challenged so directly without raising his voice, but Caroline hadn't raised hers. 30 seconds, Gwen's voice crackled. Everett looked at Caroline. He tried to assert himself. I'm not the enemy here, you know that, right? Caroline didn't blink. You say that like it makes you less responsible. Everett exhaled sharply, sat back, and tried to regain some composure. 10 seconds, Gwen said. The live feed was about to roll again. Welcome back to the Everett Lane show, Everett said, tightening his tone. I'm here with Caroline Levitt, who's made it clear she thinks free speech is under attack. So let's push this further. Social media bans, do you really believe private companies owe you a platform? Caroline leaned in, but not aggressively, just speaking from experience. I believe when the digital town square controls information that affects national elections and shuts down stories without consequence, we've got a problem. Everett smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You mean like misinformation? Caroline nodded. Exactly. Misinformation. Like the time an outlet reported something you said out of context, and you posted 5 videos correcting it. Should you have been suspended for that? Everett hesitated. That's different. That was my own content. Caroline interrupted, calm but firm. The platform didn't know that. They acted on what they thought. That's the point. He tried to pivot. But it's their business, their call. Caroline sat back. And if your bank decided to freeze your account because they didn't like your opinions? Everett laughed, but it sounded nervous. Come on, that's a stretch. No, she replied, her voice sharp, it's a direction. She let that statement sit in the air. Everett seemed lost, flipping through his cards, glancing toward the control room. Do we have the clip ready? Gwen's voice crackled back. Asterisk, you didn't ask for one that rattled him. Asterisk. He blinked, looking back to Caroline. Okay, so what's the solution? Let everyone say anything, anytime, anywhere. Caroline smiled faintly. The solution is accountability. Not to corporations, but to each other. If someone lies, call them out. Debate them. Beat them in the arena of ideas. But don't lock the arena doors. Everett shifted in his seat, his knees bouncing. Caroline continued, a slight edge to her voice now. You talk about protecting democracy, but you're defending systems that punish disagreement. That's not protecting anything. That's controlling outcomes. Everett waved her off. You've made your point. No, Everett, Caroline said, calm but unflinching, I haven't. That stopped him cold. He stared at her, and for a brief moment, everything went still. You invited me here to make noise, she continued. I showed up to make a point. You don't have to agree, but you could at least let me finish a sentence without slicing it in half. The silence between them was thick. Everett turned to the camera. Well, that's all the time we have for today, he said, forcing a smile. No, Caroline responded. You still haven't answered my question. He looked at her, confused. Which one? The one I asked earlier, she replied, voice soft but clear. Do you ever let your guests finish a thought before telling them what they meant? Everett stared, speechless. Caroline leaned forward, her voice even softer now. Because if you don't, then what are you even doing? Hosting an interview? Or performing? The silence that followed was thick. The crew remained frozen, unsure of what to do. Even the floor manager hesitated, one hand raised, unsure whether to wave them off or let it ride. Finally, Everett cleared his throat, forcing a smile. Caroline thinks the real threat is too many guardrails. Good to know. Caroline spoke gently, without sarcasm. No, Everett. I think the real threat is when the people with the microphones pretend they don't have them. That hit. Everett's chair creaked as he leaned back, his face a tight mask of frustration. He wasn't used to losing grip this early, especially not on his own turf. He tried to take control again. Well, some of us actually work in media, Caroline. We know what's reckless and what's responsible. She tilted her head slightly. Responsible would have been letting your guest answer without interruption. That did it. Everett pushed away from the desk, adjusted his mic pack, and muttered something the cameras didn't catch. He abruptly stood and started to leave the set. His mic dangled from his collar. Caroline didn't move. She simply turned her face toward the camera, which had instinctively cut to her wide shot. Calm, clear, she looked directly into the lens. If walking off is easier than listening, she said, maybe we're not the fragile ones after all. The silence that followed was palpable. Everett had already disappeared behind the curtain, the crew trailing after him like nervous interns. Lyle, watching from backstage, whispered under his breath, holy hell. Back in the control booth, Gwen rubbed her temples. We're not cutting. Leave the shot. Let her speak. Caroline straightened in her chair. This was never about left or right, she said. It's about whether people who ask hard questions get treated like enemies. Whether we can disagree without someone storming off stage. A few heads in the crew nodded. No one spoke. She continued, you can yell. You can walk out. Or you can stay seated and prove your ideas can hold up in daylight. That's what grown-ups do. At that moment, someone in the control room hit the live feed to the web, and suddenly the studio was streaming directly online, unedited, uncut. Caroline glanced once more at the empty chair across from her, still warm. I came here to have a conversation, she said. Not a performance. Not a spectacle. Just a conversation. One we clearly needed more than I thought. She stood, unhooked her mic, and handed it to the tech. No one called her back. No one needed to. The cameras had captured what words couldn't. The moment everything shifted. But it wasn't until she stepped into the hallway and saw the notifications pouring onto her phone that she realized just how far this moment had traveled. Her phone buzzed non-stop with messages, missed calls, and emails. Her lock screen was a blur of names. Lyle caught up with her by the service elevator. You okay? He asked. She nodded, still scrolling. What's it look like out there? He leaned in slightly. You're everywhere. Trending on X, Instagram clips already circulating. Somebody screen recorded the walk-off and added subtitles. Caroline blinked. That fast, . A producer from another show passed them in the hallway, giving Caroline a sharp, half-curious, half-concerned glance. No words, just a look. They rode the elevator down in silence. Somewhere between floors 6 and 4, Caroline's phone buzzed again. A call from a number she didn't recognize. She declined it. Any word from Everett? She asked. Lyle shook his head. Gwen's doing damage control. They might cut the show short tonight and air a panel. As they stepped into the parking garage, the early evening chill wrapped around them. Caroline finally exhaled. I wasn't trying to humiliate him, she said quietly. I know, Lyle replied. You were just honest. That's what rattled him. She sat in the back of the car, phone still in hand. Notifications kept rolling. Caroline Levitt stands her ground. Everett Lane gets schooled on LiveTV. The moment everything shifted. Some cheered. Others were furious. A few called it a publicity stunt. But most just kept rewatching the clip, sharing it, arguing over it, quoting it. By the time they reached the hotel, Gwen had texted Lyle. Everett's not speaking to press. Please don't gloat. Caroline laughed when she read it. I wasn't planning to. Later that night, she sat alone in her room, replaying the moment. Not the part where Everett walked off, but the seconds before the silence. The decision not to yell. Not to match volume with volume. It would have been easy to snap back. But she didn't. And that made all the difference. A text came through from her brother in Austin. You stayed seated. That's the whole win. She replied, thanks. It did to a lot of people, he answered. Caroline looked out the window at the city below. The streets were still alive, people going about their lives, not thinking about cable TV feuds. And yet, in some corner of the internet, a conversation had started. Not just about left and right, but about tone, control, and who gets to speak. She thought about what Everett had said earlier. Some of us actually work in media. Maybe that was the problem. Too many shows. Not enough listening. Too many rehearsed lines instead of facing hard questions. Caroline didn't have all the answers. She didn't think she'd won anything. But she knew one thing.